Sit, Pat.
Make sure that the monitor goes on when it when the show opens up.
Pat, the monitor isn't on. Okay. It's in black.
Yeah, okay. You just have to push a button, then it goes on.
All right.
Quiet on the set.
Hello, my name is Christine Schiavone, and our show is Spiritual Exploration. Tonight, it is my honor to have back with me a guest that has been here almost 2 years ago. He was here the last time, and we had a wonderful show with him. And we're going to have, I'm sure, a wonderful show tonight because we're going to talk about the path to self-mastery. And at this time, I would like to reintroduce my audience to Louix Dor Dempriey, otherwise known as Pranananda. Hello and welcome.
Hi there. Hi, nice to see you again.
Oh, so great to see you again.
Thanks for having me back.
Oh, my pleasure. Anytime, anytime. So I know that you're going to be coming. We'll talk about it later. You'll be back in March, too, so we'll do another show then.
Oh, thanks. That'd be great.
Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. And so tonight, as I said, we're going to talk about the path to self-mastery. And it is a path that a lot of us would aspire to, I imagine. And a lot of us don't know really how to do it, how to get there. We do it day by day, I guess, and try to live the lives that we live as well as we can. But tell us exactly, first of all, what is self-mastery? What are we doing when we're trying to become self-masters?
Well, that would you'd probably get a different explanation by any different master who says it. Mm-hmm. So to put it in simplest terms, the way I like to describe it is purifying all levels of your consciousness, all 4 levels of creation, all your thoughts, feelings, words, and deeds, into ones that are holy and purely loving. So really, becoming self-masterful is really, number 1, becoming pure unconditional love once again as we were created. It's about mastering the human experiment, life on earth, to walk in the world as an emanation of love, to be having vanquished all your fears and transcended them so that you live in a state of balance, of equanimity, of union and communion with the divine ongoingly. In other words, it's also having transcended the dualistic, illusionary experience and perception of being separate from the Creator, that you're now walking in a space whereby you are now restored your inherent blueprint of your inherent divinity has been restored fully, and you're now walking as God on earth in a fully divinely God-merged state where you're walking the planet the way Jesus did, and the way many others have done.
In other words, instead of feeling that the Creator is outside of us, we feel that our Creator is inside of us.
That's part of it, and more to it, it's also about you're no longer feeling like you're a victim, like things happen to you and that you're at the effect of all the forces of the environment. The truth is that each of us is the great central sun. And it's coming back to that knowingness that I am the center of my universe, and my thoughts, my feelings, and my belief systems dictate and determine every experience that I have, as well as my soul's choices that I've made even long before I incarnated. But I'm the center of the universe. You're the center of your universe, and you're not at the effect of any circumstance or any other person. I mean, you could still have experiences, and you can still have emotions up, down, high, low, and many masters do. They still have moments of anger or sadness and possibly even fear, but they're momentary, and furthermore, they're not defined by them. But what defines them, they are the knowingness that I am a being of pure love, walking in this world as love, who in a particular moment, if I stumble and cut my foot on the ground, my leg might hurt, but I'm not defined by that, So if a friend passes away, it doesn't mean you'll never cry. You may cry a lot, but you're not defined by it. You don't feel all of a sudden that your life is destroyed or that you can't go on, because you know that you just have these knowingnesses of the universal truths that built and govern creation. You have a knowingness of the laws of cause and effect, and you have mastered those. That's really, if I could encapsulate the whole thing, self-mastery is having mastered all the laws of cause and effect, and you walk and demonstrate those laws and the mastery of them in every moment of your life.
I see. So in other words, what you're saying is that we just take life as it comes, and we don't let things destroy us that might happen outside of our life, outside of our being.
Yeah, but some people might interpret that as repression or avoidance or denial too, because a lot of people live in those states of consciousness, and they might convince themselves that they're not letting things affect them. It's not even about letting, I suppose you could say that, but they really don't have the power to, because now they're seen for what they truly are. A master sees them as what they are, and that's illusion. The whole universe is just a hologram of thought. So everything is here as, number one, because we all agree to it, and the other thing, it's all here as catalysts, as instruments and vehicles and ways of teaching us and of being reflections for us of all the different parts of ourselves. So in other words, on a planet of 7 billion people, you're really the only person on the planet, and everyone is a reflection of some one or more aspects of you. Same with everything else. It's just all a hologram that's there to teach you, to help you impregnate and integrate and assimilate the totality of who you are as a divine creation in the image of God. And that's why we have this outer creation to teach us that. So to believe that it's real and then to be run by it, is to live as a victim.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
I see. In other words, like when something happens, we admit that it happened, but we don't let it, as you said, define us. It doesn't become who we are.
Right, because you know the truth. You know a higher truth.
Right.
And that takes the power away from the illusory truths, which are not truth at all.
So tell us, any individual person who is interested in spirituality but doesn't really know how to take that path, what would you suggest? How would they, conduct themselves?
In terms of
their daily lives, in terms of their
wanting
relations with other people.
In terms of wanting to become more masterful.
Yes, yes.
Well, going back to what I had started with, it's very easy, regardless of your religious beliefs or your spiritual beliefs. That's why I like to take people's focus to the ultimate reality, which is love and non-love. People want to talk about, what is right and wrong and good and bad, but that's a dead-end road that just leads to more pain and suffering. It's really placing your focus on what is of love, what is pure and true and of love, and focus to be that, think that, speak that, feel that at all times. And of course, no one person is going to be 100% of that in all categories on day one,
True.
or maybe even by the end of your life. But what's beautiful about this principle is that every single person can understand that regardless of your education, or your caste, or your culture, or your creed, and every single person can become more and more love in all those categories every day of your life without anyone's input or anyone's effect upon you, without anyone stopping you, blocking you. Everyone has the power to do that. And there are many ways to go about it and tools to use to help that, but every single person can do that. And the truth is that I know in my heart of hearts that every single person knows the truth in every moment. We just spend most of our lives denying. You know, in the quiet and still of our quiet and still of our nights, everyone knows. You could look back on your day, and I ask people to do this, to reflect and say, you know, was I the best I could be in that moment? Was I loving in my interaction with so-and-so? Where could I have been greater love? And not in a place of being judgmental or condescending or prosecuting of the self or persecuting, but more in a way of the spirit of inquiry, of really wanting to purify ourselves and be that emanation of love, because whatever you put out into the universe comes back to you, and that's what you create. The
Yes.
consciousness you're in when you create is what you create.
Right.
So,
right.
and you know, do unto others. So we want to be the best. We want to be the best we can be, and everybody has the ability.
Yeah.
Everybody has the ability to reflect upon that, and to know that. But it really takes a certain level of honesty and accountability for someone to do that. And when people are around, that's when people don't want to do it, because they want to look good, they want to be right, their egos want to be right, they want approval, they want to be liked. So, but you can always do it safely and privately at home every night and reflect. And then when you see where you weren't the kindest, the best, the most honest, the most true and pure, you can, number one, admit it to yourself first and foremost, possibly make apologies where necessary, make restitution where necessary, and most importantly, forgive yourself, and then make a new commitment. I'll never do that again, or tomorrow I'll do that this way. I know I can do this better, and I know I can give more here. And in this way, every single person, if you never are part of a religion, if you never have a spiritual teacher, if you never have a guru, you can still be growing on that path to self-mastery by focusing on your 4 levels of creation: thoughts, feelings, words, and deeds, and purifying them every minute of your day. But you really have to be honest with yourself in order to do that.
And honest, what you mean by honest is to admit to yourself, yeah, I did this wrong, or I did this, I could have done this better.
Yeah, even if you don't have the courage or the integrity to admit it to other people, at least it's a starting point. Because as I said, we all know the truth in every moment.
Well, when it comes to like your relationships, I think that's probably the most important thing in our lives, is our relationships, especially with other people. You know, whether it be a spouse, or a relationship between a child and a parent, or friends, or whatever. When there is, like, say, for instance, a kind of a falling out of sorts, and every all relationships have those kind of experiences. So, say you come to the conclusion that someone in your circle isn't good for you anymore. So then, what do? You just, I mean, you still want to, you don't want to feel any negativity toward the person, but you want to, but you don't want to have that person around you anymore because they're not doing good things for you. So. So you can still, I guess, walk in love toward that person in some ways, right?
Absolutely. And maybe, you know, that person, that relationship doesn't serve your highest good anymore. You can still forgive and bless and love that one and wish the best for this individual. But you also have to have a certain level of self-love and self-dignity, that you're not going to be a doormat to someone, or continually, you know, allow yourself to be abused. But see, again, here's where the spirit of self-inquiry comes in, is very important. A lot of people, when they have, I'm glad you brought that point up too, because it's a twofold thing. Mm-hmm. One, there is the seeing what is right for me, and does this relationship serve me? But another part, and it's even more important, is in that spirit of self-inquiry, there is a place of looking at why did I create this? Why am I creating the abusive partner? Because if you don't get the lesson, you see, you can avoid a person, you can avoid and escape a relationship, a job, you can even avoid an entire incarnation. We are that powerful. Even the most asleep people are that powerful. However, you cannot avoid a single lesson your soul needs you to have. You can't. So every time we either deny, repress, run, escape, avoid, blame, project, we are in some form of victim consciousness and denial, and we're not seeing the why. The what that happens in our life is circumstantial. That's kind of a moot point. The real question to always be asking is why? Why did I create this? Why did I draw this to my life? What is it teaching me about me? What is it asking of me? Because everything we draw is that reflection. It might be asking you myriad different things. So if you're not reflecting on the circumstance and the situation, and you just push that person out of your life, you're going to magnetize it again. Not the same, it'll have a different garb, different clothing, different face, different head, different age, different gender, different whatever, different country. But whatever you resist persists and intensifies. So it's every time our soul in concert with God, the lords of karma, the universe, the collective consciousness, we orchestrate everything in our lives. And so when we magnetize a situation to teach us a lesson so that we can grow and expand in consciousness and in love, and then we ignore it or avoid it or suppress it, whatever we do, beat the daylights out of it to get away from it, the universe and all of creation in honor of us says, oh, maybe he didn't hear it. Maybe she didn't hear it. I'll send it again and I'll turn it up a little louder because he probably didn't hear it.
In the form of a different person?
Yeah,
or...
a more abusive person, a louder, a more violent, and it just keeps coming and coming and coming. And then what happens is if people want to stay as victims, which many people do, they'll just keep saying, you know, I have the most rotten people around me and I just keep getting all these miserable people and I'm just, you know, I'm worth more than that. But evidently there's something in that one that this individual is not seeing. How, you know, in order to keep magnetizing abusive relationships, there's got to be something within that self that is not holding oneself as lovable. So you only magnetize people who will not love you unconditionally. So you have to, the place to look is at your self-worth and self-esteem and at your own issues. And of course, the first place to look is in kind. You know, if someone is arrogant and righteous, the first place to look is direct reflection. Where is it showing me? Where am I being arrogant? But it's not always 100% direct reflection. That's the first place and the most obvious and the simplest. But there's always something. And it doesn't always mean, I often have people say to me, oh, so we're just supposed to pick apart all the bad things about ourselves. No, many times you magnetize things to acknowledge yourself, to get flattery and praise and upliftment. Many times you'll magnetize situations to show you how you're doing things beautifully, or to refine some part of you that's already refined. For instance, let's suppose you're the most loving person in the world. People just gush all around you, which of course I'm sure they do. But let's say you're the most loving person in the world and no one ever has a bad word to say about you. And then you magnetize a situation where someone all of a sudden, and let's say, for instance, in your case, let's suppose that this is not a pattern for you, that this is just a fluke thing. You magnetize someone who's just all of a sudden really, really disrespectful and abusive. And you think to yourself, well, this is strange. I don't normally have this. So that would send a light bulb to go on and say, now what is this asking of me? So maybe it's not saying you're disrespectful and abusive, because you're not. But maybe it's asking you in that moment to become greater compassion. Maybe it's asking you to become greater forgiveness. You know, like Jesus said, will you turn the other cheek? Maybe in this one moment, what God's asking of me is, I'm already compassionate, I believe, and I'm already forgiving. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to become even more forgiveness. What's wrong with that? I mean, how much of God's love is enough?
There's nothing wrong with being forgiving.
So it's important that people don't get in the mindset, oh, I'm supposed to pick myself apart and just criticize myself all day. That's the wounded child speaking, that hears anything coming as the critical parent. What's wrong with you? Why can't you be like your brother? And, loving refinement, if it comes from God or a pure teacher or someone who's innocent in some way and just a circumstance is offering you something, we have to train ourselves not to hear everything from that wounded child's consciousness. Always, I'm getting picked on, what's wrong with me? It's about the spirit of inquiry is an adventure. It's a treasure hunt, because you're looking to find the pearls, the diamonds. You're panning for gold to find those beautiful parts of self and the not so beautiful parts, so that you can turn them into gold. So you can be the alchemist and just keep making diamonds out of coal.
So if you do have like someone in your life who's been abusive and all that, you don't have to be their best friend, but you have to feel forgiveness in your heart so that you can further your own path.
Well, you don't have to, but it'd be wise to.
Well, exactly. Well, yeah. Well,
But also another important point, I'm glad you brought that one up, because if someone is non-loving toward us and we decide to hold on to anger and judgment and get retaliatory, you not only you keep feeding that fire with oxygen, so it's going to keep coming into you, if not from that person, then from more and larger. But the other thing it does, which is even more painful but more hidden, is that you get embroiled in the karma of that one's actions. When you reflect unconditional love back to other people, regardless of what they say and do, you have a force field of love around you that protects you, and you do not create karmic hooks where you're now embroiled in that circumstance and life lesson. So it frees you in a way that's very empowering. And what happens for the situation, the blessing that the other person gets is it just bounces off of you and comes back to the person. So long as, you shouldn't want to be holding that intention, because then that's like cursing someone.
Yeah.
But what you want to hold is just that I love and bless everyone,
right,
and forgive my trespassers and my enemies. But I will also at the same time be looking to see, is there a lesson in this for me? What is the lesson? What is the gift? Everything in life is a gift. And our job as treasure hunters is to find the gift, find the blessing in everything, in every moment. Which, as I said, could be an acknowledgement for you. It could be something to expand a virtue you already have, to become more of it. Or it could be to refine some not quite so virtuous trait, and we all have them.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, we're all here constantly refining ourselves.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, well, we're all perfect, but we're perfect in God's eyes. But the thing is, we all have areas we can refine all the time.
Oh, sure. We all have things that we have to work on.
Yeah. I even say to people that a lot of people think when you become enlightened that it's just, it's all hearts and flowers and you're just skipping the poppy field all day. But, when you're done refining all your distortions, which don't end at enlightenment, they continue way beyond it. But at some point in your life, let's suppose you completely refine all your distortions, so you're living as pure love and pure truth, then you spend the rest of your life refining your refinements.
Oh, really?
Yeah, to become greater love, greater compassion. If you think about it, it makes sense. If God is infinite love, infinitely expanding all the time, then why shouldn't we be?
That's true, because we're a part of God.
Exactly.
Right.
Why become complacent? Oh, I'm there. I'm loving, so that's enough.
Oh, yeah, I'm perfect now. I don't need to do anything else.
Complacency is the most deadly disease in the world.
To come to the point where you feel that there's no more that you can do.
That you've arrived and you're as good as you can be, and that's it. And complacency marks the beginning of decline. So it's a deadly disease. And that complacency is a temptation. It's an insidious little demon, like a form of evil that can even prevent masters from attaining the zenith of their potential in a given lifetime. Because that little temptation is always there. It never leaves you. The only thing that changes in life is at some point, hopefully, you leave it. But temptation is always there, just waiting, like a door-to-door salesman, just waiting for that little crack, and I'm in. And one of the best ones it uses is complacency. That's one of the best temptations. Look at you. Ooh.
Yeah.
I often say to walk in mastery is to be as equally unaffected by the praise as by the criticism. And when you just realize, give the glory to God and just keep doing your work, say, how may I serve you, Lord? How may I serve you, Lord? Granted, it's anyone would admit it's better to get a compliment than to get poked in the eye with a sharp stick.
Right.
But you shouldn't become impressed by it or attached to it, because, we're here all doing the best we can, hopefully, to be love, to serve love, to create love, and to help others. And, when everyone's going to have opinions, no matter how nice you are and how pure you are.
That's true.
Everybody won't like you. Everybody won't agree with you.
Yeah, well, if you want an example, look at Jesus. Not everybody loved him and agreed with him, and yet he was one of the most perfect people that ever walked this earth.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great example.
Yeah.
And look at all the opportunities he had to become greater forgiveness and greater compassion.
Yeah, absolutely, especially with being crucified and all that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he was on the cross in pain, and he forgave
Still
everybody.
blessing them and forgiving
Still
them.
blessing and forgiving, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing a lot of people don't know, because it's not really written about in the Bible or any scriptures, is that his forgiveness, the consummation of his blessing and forgiveness in the midst of his agony, is what actually invoked the amount of light and divinity necessary to fuel his ascension. Because every time you choose love in the face of adversity, your heart and consciousness expand. It's easy to bless and forgive everyone in a prayer circle at a retreat or when you're singing We Are the World. But when someone's giving you the finger in traffic or someone just burned your house down or took your job away, that's when God not only most needs us to be loving and forgiving, but that's also when the greatest gains are made. Because when you choose love in the face of adversity, you invoke such an inordinate amount of light that it catapults you into a higher frame of consciousness. And it's real. It's not coping, and it's transcendence. It's alchemical transfiguration. And so that choice he made to forgive and bless everyone while they're stabbing him and torturing him and whipping him and cursing him, that brought in the light that was necessary to move him into his light body right into his ascension. Mm-hmm. So it was all divinely orchestrated, perfectly divinely orchestrated, which doesn't mean he didn't have human thoughts and opinions about it. He cried out to God at the end, and there were a lot of things he did.
Right.
So and that's another perfect example of what we talked about earlier. He had human circumstances. I mean, he still said that phrase, and forgive my Hebrew, the Eloi, Eloi, Male Sabak. You know the one? My God, why have you forsaken me?
That's right, yes.
He still cried that out, but that didn't mean he didn't know what was happening. That was an expression of his humanness in the midst of that agony, but it was never in place of his divine knowing. He knew who he was. He discovered who he was early on in life, and he saw his crucifixion long before it happened. So, and he knew that it had to happen, and he allowed it. He didn't get caught, like the book says. He allowed it because God wanted him to.
He knew what was coming.
But there were times when he would have private discussions with his creator and say, does it really need to happen? If there's any other way, I'm game. I mean, you know, this is a big one, a big pill to swallow. I'll do it, but if there's any other way, and he just kept knowing, no, this must be, thy will be done, thy will be done. So even in those penultimate moments there, that humanness in him cried out, but it wasn't of a victim like, oh, I don't believe in God, and look what you did to me. It wasn't that. It was just the human experience in the midst of his divine knowing and surrender. It was a parallel reality occurring concurrently.
So we as humans can have that human experience as well, and sometimes feel like, oh, I've been victimized or something like that, but then you have to grow out of it.
Yeah, you got to step out and realize, okay, that's just my knee-jerk reaction. No one did anything to me. Everything that happened to me, I wanted, needed, chose, and created to serve me, to help me become closer to God and to become more of God-like.
Good, bad, or indifferent.
Yeah, and that's it. We created it all, so.
So you think that we, in the before time, create these things so that we can come down to earth and have these experiences because we want to see our soul become on a higher level later on?
Yeah, well, that's the whole point of it, is to realize our divinity so that we could one day live as gods and goddesses on this paradise called earth. God didn't put us here to suffer. We chose suffering.
Yes.
God gave us the path of grace. It's humans who choose suffering.
Suffering is optional.
It is optional, not required. It's not in the rule book.
In other, yes, we if something happens that is not a happy event for us, we can choose to suffer and we can choose to not suffer. And if we choose to suffer, we can stop that suffering at a certain time also and say, okay, that's enough, I had enough suffering. And we can move on.
But it's also, that's true, but it's also hard to do that if one is not dealing with the truth and seeing the truth of the situation. Because then as a victim, it's really hard to swallow that pill and to put it out of your mind. So you have to really be anchored in truth to realize that if I'm the only person on the planet, if there are 7 billion reflections of me, then how can anyone do anything to me in the first place if there's no one there? It's just me. If you kick me in the shins right now with your nice Well, you got soft shoes. But let's say you had pointed toe shoes,
Okay.
and you kick me in the shin and really put a welt there. I've got a free-willed choice to lean over and kiss you on the cheek and say thank you. Or I could get angry, get up, storm off the set and say, I'll never speak to you again, you blankety, blankety, blank. But the action and my emotional reaction are mutually exclusive. They're not related. You see, psychology purports to say that that emotions are behavioral responses to stimuli. I disagree. That's incorrect. Emotions are free-willed choices. Now, they may be influenced by our behavior patterns and our belief systems, but at the level of the absolute, they're still free-willed choices. I don't have to get angry at you if you kick me in the shins. I can, and I can tell you right now I won't. If you want to try it, I won't.
No, I'm not into it.
But I know you would.
I don't do things like